and I have been married for 4 years. 4 years just a month ago, so we're just past 4 years out. We are from Athens. Actually, he's from Ghana, West Africa. I'm from Athens, Georgia. We met in Athens, Georgia. We dated for a long time before we got married. It took time for us to get to know one another. There's a lot of things that, we went through, and we got our schooling done, and before we decided to get married. We're both in the medical field. I'm a nurse practitioner. I also have a doctorate in nursing, so sometimes you may see that doctor part of me, that nurse practitioner part of me come out. But yeah, I'm a doctor nurse, as some of my friends say or tease me about. So we got married in Atlanta, Georgia, where we spent much of our time at, and where his family is right now. After we got married, we moved to Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I live right now. My husband went to school here, and we just continued our journey here for some more training. I never thought I would land myself in Charleston, South Carolina. I had heard people talk about how beautiful it was, and it is. It's a really, really beautiful city. There's good and bad. It's the good old South, so, there's good and bad. That's all I'll say about that as it relates to Charleston, but it's a beautiful place, and we're so thankful to be somewhere where you can get to the beach, and, in a hop, skip, and a jump. The weather is mild. There's no extreme temperatures. I didn't even get out most of my jackets that I wore in Atlanta here in Charleston. It's a delight. It's great food. It's laid back. But we love it here in Charleston. So we've been here for since we got married, a little over that, 4.5 years as a couple, and we are enjoying that. We started our journey about 8 months after we got married. We stopped using birth control. And let me backtrack a little bit from that. I have endometriosis, which is a condition whereas the blood that normally comes out of your body during menstruation, during a period, it actually retrogrades back up into the uterus. And with endometriosis, it can attach itself to different areas within the abdomen. It can attach itself onto your bladder. It can attach itself onto your bowel. It can even attach itself on even further up in your abdomen, even as far up as your lungs. But it's tissue, it's active endometrial tissue that's normally lining the uterus that somehow escapes and retrogrades back up into the body. No one knows why it happens. There's different scenarios or different theories about it being autoimmune and it having autoimmune qualities in nature, but no one really knows why someone gets endometriosis. So you just do. And I'll tell you the symptoms of it later, but it attaches itself inside the abdomen, and when your cycle comes on, and even before the cycle comes on, you start to feel the pain of the inflammation of the tissue, because the tissue is getting active. It wants to shed just as the tissue in your uterus wants to shed. The tissue that's connecting itself on the outside of your uterus wants to shed. So it gets inflamed and it has nowhere to go. So it does cause a lot of pain and pressure, and it will sometimes, when your period's over, this tissue that's there, it kind of scars over. So it actually forms some scarring and some adhesions in the area where it has attached itself. And because of that, some people have some difficulty with bowel movements because of how it attaches, and maybe some pain when you go to the restroom. You may start to feel pain during intercourse because of the adhesions that's closer to the back, cul-de-sac of that area. You may experience very painful, abnormally painful periods that feels like something's pulling from the inside down. And I'm going into detail about this because endometriosis is as common as it is. I have people every day asking me, what is that? If I say it, they'll, I shouldn't say every day, but more frequently than I would expect, people still are asking, what is it? And so I just want you guys to know, in case you start having symptoms, it's something I want you to bring to your doctor's attention because it is important. Anyways, I started experiencing symptoms when I was around 26 years old or 25 years old. And it was the pain during defecation, and it was the pain during intercourse, not to be graphic, but deep penetrative intercourse, which is typical of this condition, that I started feeling the pain, more pain during menses. When my menstruation would come on, I would be like balled over, bring you to the floor in pain. And this just became progressive as the years went on. So I kind of diagnosed myself. At the time, I was already a nurse. And I went to my doctor. I said, I think I have endometriosis. Can you please check me out? The only way you can diagnose this is a laparoscopic procedure. There's no ultrasound, no imaging, no non-invasive way to know if you have endometriosis. You have to actually visualize the adhesions inside your belly. So in order to do this, my doctor did a procedure called laparoscopy. And she went inside, and she sure enough found adhesions all over the place, in my bowel, bladder, on the ovaries, on the uterus, all kinds of different places. And while she was in there, she used her laser to laser certain spots off to deactivate that tissue so that it wouldn't become inflamed again, or at least for a period of time. There's no cure for endometriosis, so there's ways to make it better. There's things you can do as far as eating, which I'll share later in my journey. So the doctor, in so many words, fixed me for that period of time. When I came back to her for the follow-up appointment, she told me that, the endometriosis was severe, like a stage 3. Stage 4 is the highest level of endometriosis. She said, you need to get pregnant now. I looked at her like she was crazy. Because even though my husband and I at the time had been dating for a while, since high school, we weren't ready for marriage. And I just kind of let it blow over. I mean, what do? You're not ready for marriage. You can't rush marriage and then end up in an even worse situation, get pregnant, and being a situation where you may not have a stable home or environment for that child if you weren't ready to get married in the first place. So I kind of discounted it. Life happened after that for years. My husband went to medical school. I went to got my master's degree, got my doctorate degree. There were other things that occurred in our life that prohibited us from getting married right away. So when we did get married, so bringing back forward here, we waited a little bit of time to get to know each other as husband and wife, and after about 8 months I got off the birth control. I was taking NuvaRing at the time. Got off of that, and guess what? 1 month afterwards I got pregnant. I was so thankful, so excited. Didn't even think about anything but praise God, I'm pregnant. Unfortunately, after 6 weeks, we lost that baby, which was devastating to me. Devastating, but at the same time, I was still hopeful because I knew from my medical background that many, many women have one miscarriage during their span of having babies. Most women, not most women, but a good percentage of women do. So I was pretty confident that we could get pregnant again and it'd be all good. So wasn't worried. I started worrying after we tried with unprotected intercourse for months. The months went on. 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. At 8 months, I actually went into my OBGYN and said, listen, I know this is not the typical 12-month period, the waiting period, but I felt like I was getting older. I was heading towards 32 at the time. I knew that I had endometriosis, so I knew that there were already some challenges that we had to overcome. So I went to her, and we had a hysterosalpingogram done, an HSG, which is a test where they send some dye up into your fallopian tubes to make sure that your fallopian tubes are nice and patent and clear in order for passage of the egg to come out. Okay, so had that test done and it was normal. So I got on some infertility, not Clomid, a medication very similar to Clomid, to help maybe release more eggs, to increase my chances of getting pregnant. I went through 2 rounds of that, and it actually made my ovulation more abnormal than it was before, so that didn't work. So after that, I would say, so now we're probably more towards a year into the no pregnancy since the miscarriage. I had a test done, and my doctor drew a test to test my FSH, follicular stimulating hormone, which is a hormone that actually tells you about how you're ovulating, and if you're ovulating, and how, if you are ovulating, how well those follicles are maturing. So it tells you basically how good your eggs are at the time. And then there's another test called an AMH, which tells you how healthy those eggs are too. It gives you some more information as to what your chances are of still being fertile. And those numbers came back with a crushing blow that I did not expect. Those numbers came back abnormally. My FSH was, which is supposed to be typically for my age range, less than 10, it was almost 30. My AMH, and that's a number that should be more like above 2, that number for me was less than 0.06. It was hardly even detectable. And what that said was my ovaries seemed to be prematurely shutting down. And I was basically going into premature ovarian failure, or low ovarian reserve. You might also hear that terminology. So with that challenge ahead of me, we tried naturally for a little bit of time, but really we really wanted to go forward with trying to preserve the eggs that we did have left. So we went right really into an IVF cycle, a $10,000 cycle. It is not cheap, but it was something that we felt like we really wanted to do. Now, the doctor told us that the chances of us using our own eggs through IVF and getting pregnant were very small. I think they gave us a 5 or 10% chance of it working. But we weren't ready for the other options, donor eggs, adoption, so we tried it. And unfortunately, it was not effective. We ended up having only one egg. And I can go into further details about these processes later in the journey, but I just want to give you guys an idea of where I am. The one egg that we did produce did not fertilize with my husband's sperm, which was another devastating blow to my ego and into everything, all of our hopes, that we put into that process. It was a huge letdown to see that it wasn't successful. However, let me tell you about God. Our God is so wonderful. Our God is so wonderful that a month after the IVF cycle, after they told us getting pregnant on our own would be like a 1 to 5% chance, like no chance, we did get pregnant on our own. And it was reassuring to me as a woman, that my body was not completely broken, that it was possible. And it gave me a little bit more confidence. Unfortunately, that pregnancy ended in a miscarriage as well. We did get a heartbeat for weeks. This baby had a very slow heartbeat, so we knew that it was something wrong with the pregnancy. Rather, it was a genetic abnormality. We really don't know. We never got any closure on that end, but we lost that baby at about 9 weeks. And this time was much harder than that first loss. It was crushing. I mean, it took me a while to get past it. Not to mention the endometriosis got a little worse after that process. As well, so I had more pain to deal with after that miscarriage. I had a second D&C to help pass that miscarriage. Fast forwarding, a year and a half later, we weren't ready to do another IVF cycle because at this point our chances of getting pregnant on our own and doing it through an IVF cycle were pretty much the same percentage or statistical chance that we would get pregnant. So we did not want to go through spending all that extra money. So we decided to just go through the journey, praying, fasting, hoping, developing our relationship as a couple, developing our relationship with God. We just kind of kept moving forward. A year and a half later on our own, we got pregnant again. Third time. And this was recently October of 2015 is when we got the positive pregnancy test. And I think I will show you guys clips and pictures along the way of that journey in a different vlog, so that you get an idea of and feel for what that was like. But it was one of the happiest joys of my life. We walked through that pregnancy for 16 weeks, 5 days. We were settled in that our baby was fine and normal, that she was healthy, that we would have her. We told our family, we told our friends. We were so filled with joy and relief and excitement. I'm sorry about this phone, guys. Let me turn off the... However, this one's hard for me to talk about because it just happened 2 months ago. Actually, 2 months ago today. The day after Valentine's Day. In fact, my husband and I found out the sex of the baby this day on Valentine's Day. And the next day I started to get some cramping and some pressure while at work, and I went to the restroom and experienced even more pressure. I felt down there and I knew what was going on. Basically, I felt the baby pushing through in the vagina and realized that we were losing our baby, our precious baby. Was rushed. The ambulance came to get me. We were rushed to the hospital, and the next day we delivered Gabriella around 11:04 a.m. on the 16th of February. And I'm just now getting to the point where I can be okay. And so I just want to share the journey, where I am, how I still have hope along the way. But I just wanted to use this opportunity to bring you guys up to speed. And I want to do this in honor of my baby girl. I love her so much. And she has a place in my heart that will be there forever, as well as I call my other little my two babies, butterfly babies. And Gabriella's my baby angel. And there's nothing like losing a baby. I had an incompetent cervix. So on top of endometriosis, low ovarian reserve, and defying all the odds of the doctor telling me I would never get pregnant, I carried my baby girl to the second trimester to find that I now have an incompetent cervix. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey, but still a joy journey. And I thank you for tuning in. I look forward to talking to you more about it. Thank you, loves. I love you, and God bless.